In this lesson, you'll learn how to handle user interface input events in your Android apps. Input events are responded to using event listeners. And we studied listeners in the previous lesson on listeners and toasts, so I suggest that you review that lesson as a background to this lesson. And there are a number of different types of events that have listener interfaces. Some of them are listed on the Input Events webpage under Event Listeners, and they include onClick, where the view.onClick listener is called when a user touches the item or focuses on the item with navigation keys or trackball and presses the Enter key or trackball. And you can see onClick in action in the previous lesson on listeners. OnLongClick is the same as onClick, but requires a hold of the touch or key for 1 second. OnFocusChange, the view.onFocusChange listener is called when the user navigates onto or away from the item using the navigation keys or trackball. OnKey, the view.onKey listener is called when the user is focused on the item and presses or releases a hardware key on the device. OnTouch, the view.onTouch listener is called when the user performs an action qualified as a touch event within the bounds of the item. The onCreateContext menu, the listener is called when a context menu is being built as the result of a sustained long click. In the API Demos app, code for handling input events is embedded in a number of the modules that demonstrate input controls. For example, let's look at the Views group at the Switches demo. Let's go to Views and Switches. And we see a number of input controls. One of these, the monitored switch, has a listener associated with it. So when we change it, we see a toast down here. I don't know if you saw that. I'll do it again. It says monitored switch is off. Click it again. It says monitored switch is on. And let's look at the Java code. In the worksheet, we see that the Java code name is switches. So in our views source, we'll open the switches file. And on line 39, we see an onChecked changed listener being set, and the onChecked change code is here below. It's being done with an override to the onChecked change method in line 44. And we see the code creating the toast in line 45. And one way to determine which listener to use for an event is to consult the developer's website pages for the various input controls. For example, if we look in the API guides under User Interface and Input Controls, toggle buttons, at the bottom of the page, we see a link for the onCheck Change Listener. If you don't know where to look on the developer's website for a particular type of input event listener, try using the search capability. So for example, go back up to the top and search on Switch Listener. We see that the first entry is for toggle buttons, which is where we just were. So with a bit of research, you should be able to find a code pattern you can use as a start for creating an input event to match an input control in your user interface. That's our lesson on input events for responding to input controls. Let's continue and look at some more user interface elements.